In today's video, we have all the latest NHL trade rumors on teams like the Carolina Hurricanes, the Vancouver Canucks, and the Winnipeg Jets. We have the latest UFA rumors on top players like Johnny Gaudreau, Jack Campbell, Ilya Mikheyev, and others. Plus, we have updates on the NHL Awards, the Memorial Cup, some signings, a big update coming in Ottawa possibly tomorrow. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety and a lot of NHL news to talk about today, so let's dive right in and get started. Of course, tonight we have Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final getting underway. We have word that Nazem Kadri is expected to play for the Avalanche to make his return tonight. Doesn't look like he can really shoot all that much, but he is able to grip the stick enough to get into the game. Don't think he's going to be taking face-offs, but he will be in the lineup. It sounds like Nick Paul and Nikita Kucherov are both going to be in the lineup for Tampa as well. We know they were banged up in the last game. We'll see how they do, but doesn't appear as though there'll be any lineup changes for the Lightning. I would think tonight very well could be the best game of the series. I'm sure the Avalanche will respond after the bad loss to the Lightning in the last game, and of course the Lightning have already lost bad as well. So I think both teams are going to come at it with their best efforts tonight, and it could be the best game of the series. So we'll have to stay tuned for that. Of course, last night we saw the NHL Awards take place. We saw Austin Matthews win the Hart Trophy as well as the Ted Lindsay. Of course, the Hart Trophy is for League Most Valuable Player, and the Ted Lindsay Award is for Most Outstanding Player as voted on by the other players, so by his peers. So that's certainly quite an accomplishment. Matthews leaves with a lot of hardware. Obviously, he won the Rocket Richard Trophy this year as well, so that's 3 individual trophies. So good on him. He had an outstanding year. Of course, Igor Shesterkin won the Vezina Trophy. No surprise there. Moritz Seider won the Calder Trophy. No big shocker there either. Trevor Zegras was second. Michael Bunting was third in voting. We saw the Norris Trophy for top defenseman go to Cale Makar. That was a very tight race between him and Roman Josi. Roman Josi actually had more first place votes, but Makar had more overall points. And surprisingly, there was actually a couple of voters who left Josi off the ballot completely, which is completely hard to imagine considering the year he had. Yes, there was lots of other great defensemen too, but to leave him off your ballot completely when he was just shy of 100 points, the first time we've seen that in a long time, is shocking. If a few of those people wouldn't have done that, it could have made it a little bit tighter and maybe even a victory for Josi. So some interesting developments there, but certainly fair to say that Makar is the most dynamic defenseman, I think, in the NHL today, and certainly deserves the award as well. But tight race. The first All-Star team, or the All-NHL team as we like to call it, was comprised of Matthews, Marner, and Gaudreau as your forward line, Makar and Josi as your D pair, and Igor Shesterkin between the pipes. The second team was McDavid, Tkachuk, and Huberdeau as the forward line, with Hedman, McAvoy, and Jacob Markstrom between the pipes. The all-rookie team was announced as being the forward line of Michael Bunting, Lucas Raymond, and Trevor Zegras. The D pair was Mo Seider and Alex Carrier, and Jeremy Swayman of the Bruins between the pipes. So nothing too shocking. One thing I was a little surprised at for the GM of the Year award, we know the finalists, but we don't know the winner yet. Apparently that's going to be announced at the NHL draft. The finalists are Chris Drury of the Rangers, Joe Sakic of the Avalanche, and Julian Brisebois of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm sure when it comes to Chris Drury, to be honest, the bulk of the Ranger team that's together right now, the work was done by Jeff Gorton. So I wonder what he likes to think about that scenario. Drury did a few things, obviously, but I'm surprised to see, not that Drury's a bad GM, he's still fairly new at the role. I think he's going to be great, so I'm not hating on him or anything like that, but I do think that more of that credit should go to Jeff Gorton than anybody else. And I'm surprised that some other GM maybe didn't get more love in the voting, but of course it's voted on by the peers, by the GM, so we'll see who the winner is. Personally, they've won back-to-back cups. It's hard to imagine how Julian Brisebois could not be the winner, but we'll see where things go. Another quick update here from the Memorial Cup as well. We had the second game of the tournament take place last night with the Shawinigan Cataracts taking a 4-3 victory over the Edmonton Oil Kings. So, of course, that's now both Quebec League teams, the Shawinigan Cataracts and the host St. John Sea Dogs, both have victories. And the Oil Kings of Edmonton and the Hamilton Bulldogs of the OHL both have a loss on their record. Of course, the Oil Kings are playing without their top sniper, Dylan Gunter, top prospect for the Arizona Coyotes, who was injured late in the WHL playoffs. So that's unfortunate and a big blow for them. They still have lots of other talent, though, don't get me wrong. We saw some top players in that game, including Oilers prospect Xavier Bourgault score a pretty good goal for Shawinigan. From the Oil Predators prospect, one of the better defensemen coming up here, Luke Prokop, was also on the score sheet with a goal. And Sabres prospect Olivier Nadeau scored the game-winning goal for the Shawinigan Cataracts. Shortly here, as I record this video, we have the third game taking place tonight. Now, a couple other quick notes here as well. We had a couple signings here. The Vegas Golden Knights re-signed Danil Miramanov, who is a 24-year-old undrafted player who they brought into the organization last year. He put up 40 points in 53 games at the American Hockey League. Did get into 11 NHL games with the Golden Knights as well, but mostly appeared in Henderson for them this year. He gets a 2-year contract extension with the second year being a one-way deal. So obviously Vegas has to start incorporating more younger players and cheaper contracts into their lineup here with the cap the way it is. And they're obviously been working on that. He hopefully will be a player to get into their lineup next season. And the Minnesota Wild also announced today a 2-year signing extension for pending RFA Connor DeWar, who gets a 2-year contract with $800,000 being the average annual value. So really pretty easy signing there for Billy Guerin and the Wild. So tomorrow could be a huge day for the Ottawa Senators and its fan base, taking a major step forward and possibly getting their downtown arena at the Lebreton Flats location. Of course, this has been an ongoing discussion for some time. We know that the bidding was reopened for that to be developed, and it was believed that the Senators, possibly even with a partner, had put a bid in to develop the area and get a new arena down there. Now, of course, we haven't really been able to get anything confirmed because all parties that were submitting bids were told that they were not allowed to speak about this privately until the preferred bidder was selected and made public. So they could be exonerated from the process and totally kicked out of it if they were to speak about it publicly and anything were to leak out. So it had to be top secret for everybody. That's why there hasn't been any way for anybody to confirm anything. But we do know that there was an NCC board meeting, which is a National Capital Commission, today, which was a private session. And then there is another meeting tomorrow, which will be made public, which is going to be about 30 minutes or so, around 11:15 a.m. Eastern time, which will be an announcement on the Lebreton Flats project where they're expected to announce the preferred bidder. Now, just like the Arizona Coyotes project and trying to get the Tempe Arena, where the city council announced that they were voting yes, it was really just a step in the process. It doesn't guarantee it's going to work, but it's a major step in the right direction, essentially to continue negotiations with the preferred bidder, and that their hopes would be that over the rest of this year, over the next 5 to 6 months, that they would be able to complete negotiations and have a lease in place for those bidders to be able to move forward with development. And I would suspect that the project will probably get underway early next year. So in all likelihood, if this works out, you're probably looking at least 2.5 to 3 years probably before the Senators would be, in a situation where they could consider being ready to open a new downtown arena. So we'll see where this goes. No guarantees it happens. There's no guarantee that the preferred bidder will be the Senators or somebody that they partnered with here, but it's expected that it likely would be. And I know that it's something that the team and its fan base feels it greatly needs to be able to continue surviving and thriving in the Ottawa market. So this is potentially really good news, and we'll have more updates on this situation tomorrow, as we should have an updates by the afternoon, consider the time of the meeting and the expected announcement. Now, here's some UFA rumors for you, the latest on some of the top names on that market. Of course, some updates from the Calgary Flames organization. Johnny Gaudreau, it's fully suspected right now that he is definitely going to be hitting free agency. Now, the latest reports from TSN Insider Trading suggest from Pierre LeBrun that the Flames, as we had reported back when the season first ended for them, that they were not messing around. They wanted to get down to business right away with Gaudreau and Tkachuk, and it's believed that they've made an offer to Gaudreau, and I don't think it's a scenario where, at least it didn't sound like it, where sometimes, you don't always go in with your best offer. It sounds like they made a very lucrative, very fair offer, and of course at this point they're waiting for a response from Gaudreau to see how things will proceed. Now, of course, they'd like to know, though, well ahead of the free agency opening, if he is going to sign that, or if he's going to wait and see and test the market and, possibly end up leaving. I guess it doesn't mean he's going to leave, but if he wants to go to the market, then clearly that means that there's a chance that he's going to find something else he likes and not be there. So they also have to start making contingency plans. They have to start deciding what's their plan if he does go and things like that. So they need time. So it sounds like they've made their best foot forward and they're waiting for a response. And so far there hasn't been one. And most of the other reports we hear, it sounds like there isn't going to be one and that he is likely going to go to July 13th, see what other teams are going to offer, and then make a decision. So it could leave the Flames hanging here for some time. And I wonder, without knowing the result of his situation or whether or not he's coming back, and if he is what he's signing for, that makes it hard to get down to the RFA business with Matthew Tkachuk and Andrew Mangiapane, etc. So that it could really, really have an impact. So it makes sense that they're trying to set some deadlines here without being, putting too much pressure and trying to, obviously try to do this delicately so they can have a chance to retain the player. Now, on the Leafs front, some updates on Jack Campbell and Ilya Mikheyev. This comes from Chris Johnson, who says that Ilya Mikheyev and Jack Campbell have basically had no meaningful negotiations at all. Apparently there has been a little bit of talk between their sides, their agents, and the Leafs, but it's really not much. They haven't ever reached a point where they've actually exchanged numbers for contract amounts or anything like that. So that shows you that they're very early in the process, and it really hasn't gotten very far, which is not a good sign for the players coming back, of course. Apparently, according to CJ, Mikheyev is looking in the neighborhood of $4 to $5 million, and he said that Campbell is looking north of $5 million, depending on how the goalie market shakes out. And here's the thing, though, and a lot of you may think that Jack Campbell was not worth more than $5 million. Here's the problem, though, is this year's goalie market and the free agent market, there's not a lot out there, to be honest. There's only a couple of goaltenders that are remotely considered starting goalies. You got Marc-Andre Fleury, who's older and looking to be more of a tandem guy. And then there's a lot of guys that are qualified as a backup. You got a guy like Ville Husso, who really could be a starter, but is a little bit still unproven. Small sample size so far, but he'll be, in that category for sure. Teams will look to him as a starting option for sure. And then there's Campbell, and there's not a lot else. So because of that, he can probably drive up his price. And if a team is going to come in and offer him, say, 5.5, 5.75, or anything of that nature, then he's probably going to have to take it. But we'll see where things go. But it certainly looks like the Leafs are in danger of losing a couple more players through free agency. It's been a common trend in the last few years that have been tough to cap the way it is. But of course, they have to do what they have to do here. Now, the Anaheim Ducks apparently are interested in a possible reunion with defenseman Josh Manson. And Pierre LeBrun reports that he's very unlikely to remain in Colorado after the season just because it's going to be extremely difficult for them to sign him. They have a lot of money tied up amongst their top players. They need to do a Nathan McKinnon extension. They want to try to retain Val Nichushkin. Kadri's a UFA. They have other contracts due as well, and it's going to prove extremely difficult, if not impossible, to sign Manson. So assuming that he'll hit the UFA market, and Ducks want to have conversations about a potential reunion if and when he makes it there. So look for that to be something that we might see. No guarantee, of course. Obviously, they traded him, and he's going to have some other options. So difficult to say where his head is at. And to be honest, it's probably going to be partially determined, at least, by whether or not he wins a Stanley Cup here in the next week as well. Because whether or not he wants to chase a cup or he has one might change his plan on where he's willing to play. Now on to the trade rumors section of the day. There's also reports from a few NHL insiders indicating that the Carolina Hurricanes have been getting calls on Marty Necas. Now Necas, a former fairly high first round pick, was a pretty good top 6 forward, top 9 forward up and down here the last few years. A really good player still fairly on the young side, still developing, but certainly he was a little bit inconsistent this year. And Seth Jarvis come along and basically stole his spot and played up higher in the lineup than him majority of the time. So it's kind of made teams wonder if Necas might be available. The Hurricanes, like many teams, have some tough situations to deal with when it comes to the salary cap. They have a guy like Tony DeAngelo, who they had on a bargain contract last year, 1 year, $1 million. Follow through, is really well liked by his teammates. So he kind of rehabilitated his image, so to speak, his reputation, and put up some real solid numbers to justify going back to, if not more than what he was making with the Rangers previously. So he's probably looking at least a $5 million contract. It's going to prove tough to bring back all their players. They're likely going to have to be faced with a few changes. And, Necas is a player that might become expendable. We'll have to see where this goes. No guarantee that they want to trade him, but Pierre LeBrun mentioned that if they want to offer, any team talking to him about Natchez wants to offer a solid, real good young defenseman, that there certainly would be interested in that, and that might be what it takes to get them to pull the trigger here. Now, on the Vancouver Canucks, reports from Darren Dreger talking about how there's a ton of interest, as we already know, in JT Miller and Brock Besser. There's obviously even more chatter since the signing of Andrei Kuzmenko comes into play because of the fact that he's expected to play a top 6 role. So they have these two players that essentially need extensions, or it's expected that the Canucks will move them if they don't come to terms, or if they don't, combination of either they don't get the contract they want for those guys, or if they decide it's best to make a move either way. But certainly look for a team like Washington to be interested in a guy like Miller. You can add them to the list of teams that are interested. There's already others. I think it's fair to say there's at least a half dozen others that have been inquired about Miller. I know, including teams like the Flyers, the Devils. To some degree, he might make sense for a team like the Islanders, but maybe not. I mean, they do need a top 6 forward. Not sure he's the exact guy they need, but there's enough teams out there that are looking for a guy like Miller. So we already know a list of teams that have inquired before. We can add Washington to it after the Nicholas Backstrom news. So they're going to likely be running into LTIR this coming season. And certainly Miller's a guy who could more than replace a guy like Backstrom. So that's a potential that they could look into this. I don't know if they have the assets to make it happen. Besser, on the other hand, as well, hard to say. We know the teams have inquired before. And Darren Dreger's reporting, too, that if the Canucks do decide to move either of these guys, that they don't want all future-based. They want younger players, but they want some younger established players by the sounds of things. So it's not going to be all picks or prospects that are not NHL ready, or not necessarily, NHL experienced already. So there could be a little bit of that in a package, but there has to be something of a proven commodity that can jump into their lineup and have an immediate impact. So it's really difficult to say if either or both of these guys gets traded. I think Miller's more likely than Besser, to be honest. Miller's obviously a little bit older. I know that they seem leery about giving a term contract to a guy of his age, just given the fact that he should, in theory at least, decline in his play in the next couple of years, and that's something that Alvin and Rutherford seem to be leery of. So we'll see, but certainly lots of teams in there. When it comes to Connor Garland in Vancouver, the Fourth Period is reporting that teams that were reportedly interested in the past, including the Maple Leafs, Devils, and Kings, are likely to re-engage here and check in on this player to see if there might be a fit as well. As I talked about with the guys like Toronto, for example, they're likely losing a player like Mikheyev. So getting a player like Garland, who they might be able to get a little bit cheaper, perhaps, might be something they're interested in. I don't know that the Leafs completely can do that deal without money going out. So I'm not really sure that we see that kind of happen. I understand the interest, but it's going to be tough to do. Cap-wise, Devils and Kings would certainly have a little bit more flexibility in that regard. And the other news that came out today was from the dailyfaceoff.com and Frank Saravalli, indicating that the Winnipeg Jets are indeed shopping captain Blake Wheeler. Now, we've had a lot of questions about Mark Scheifele this offseason, and right now indications are that Scheifele has the potential to return this offseason. He didn't request a trade to GM Kevin Cheveldayoff. Cheveldayoff's remarks indicated that he expects Scheifele back next year. So, it seems like they kind of mended over whatever issues were going on there. Like I said, Scheifele kind of gained a reputation for being a complainer and having a lot of issues, and it sounds like there's been some locker room drama. And to be honest, it sounds like, and I can't prove it, of course, because I'm not in there. It just sounds like Scheifele and Wheeler were kind of at the forefront of it. We know when Laine left that it sounded like there was issues between Laine and those guys. But, when nobody ever said enough to really confirm those reports, that's all speculation. But it just kind of adds up that maybe there's truth to it. So, of course, Wheeler's 35 now. He's going to be 36 before the next season starts. Still has 2 years at $8.25 million. Could that deter people from making a trade for Wheeler? Well, according to Frank Saravalli, he doesn't think he will, because he's still a very productive winger, still known as a player who can give you a little bit of grit, some heart and soul kind of player, and obviously be productive. He's still, clicking around close to a point per game guy. So for a team that's contending, they could add him, even if Winnipeg retained a little bit of salary per se. That certainly would not be too difficult of a deal to pull off. Hard to say what the return package could look like for Winnipeg in that regard. But there could be a scenario here where we see Winnipeg possibly move out two of their long-time players here. But like I said, we don't really have a clarity on Scheifele. It doesn't sound like they're going to trade him, but I would imagine, based on how things ended and everything, that there's bound to be some interest in other teams. I'm sure they'll at least get some calls and have to at least think about it, but we'll see. Of course, no guarantee that Wheeler goes anywhere either. But Frank Seravalli, not only does he think there's a chance, but when he updated his trade bait board today, the top 30 players, he put Wheeler all the way up at like number 3, I believe it was. So he's pretty high up there on this list. So he seems very confident that they're shopping him hard enough that a trade is extremely likely to happen. So, of course, at this point, we don't have any kind of connections on who might inquire, where he might go, what the return could be. But interesting to think that the Jets could make some pretty bold moves this offseason. So let me know your thoughts on that and everything else discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.